Welcome to the Eat Your Content podcast. I'm your host, Rich Herrera, your podcast for all things food and pop culture. Thank you so much for pushing play on my podcast. Just a reminder to like and subscribe wherever you get your podcast, and also on social media at Rich Herrera and at Eat Your Content. That way you know when things are coming up. My guest for today needs hardly any introduction. He co-founded E! Entertainment Television almost 40 years ago, helped change how we watch celebrity culture. He spent decades building media businesses from LA to Shanghai, and he's also the author of Offscript, Recipes for Success, a memoir-meets-cookbook that mixes career lessons with recipes that shaped his life. So today we're going to go beyond the curtain of E! Entertainment Television, pick a few celebrity origin stories maybe, and find out what meals he likes to cook when things go sideways sometimes. My guest today is Larry Namer. Larry, thank you so much for coming on the pod.
Thanks for having me.
I appreciate it. So I kind of want to back up a little bit and talk about your background and kind of how E! came to be. E! Entertainment Television, even to this day, is probably the only 24/7 cable news network for celebrity gossip and celebrity news. But you grew up in Brooklyn, and your path kind of led to the founding of E! It reshaped celebrity culture and celebrity coverage. What was it in your upbringing that kind of prepared you to see that opportunity in entertainment?
Well, I got to admit that at first I didn't necessarily see that as my career path or chose to follow it. It just kind of followed me. But yeah, my parents were of immigrant stock, and their uh, desire for their kids is to get a civil service job and be able to retire with a pension and do all of that. And I was actually the first kid in the family to go to college. And yeah, I graduated degree in economics and very quickly found out there weren't jobs for economists out there. So I took what I thought was going to be kind of a temporary summer job with somebody I knew was in the electrical workers union. They sent me to see this company that they said, oh, there's this new thing called cable TV. We're not sure anybody will ever pay for TV, but go see the shop steward and tell them the union sent you. And I did that. And they gave me a job as an assistant underground splicer. So I would work under the streets of New York every day, putting the wires together. And they paid me $90 a week. And, but it was, at the beginning of cable. And I, took the job seriously. And I kind of worked my way up and then realized this, was going to go beyond my 3-month time frame for my, temporary job. But eventually I became I think I was 23 years old. I became the head of the cable TV workers of the electrical union. And then I became director of operations in Manhattan, which was the largest cable company in the country at that time. But then big cities began to recruit. They began to issue franchises for cable. And well, because they began to realize cable TV was more than just good reception. Before it was a rural thing to help people get television, without an antenna. And but the one caveat all the big cities had was they wanted the cables to go underground. And lucky for me, I was like the only person who ever built underground cable systems because there was no telephone poles in Manhattan. And so there was a Canadian company who won the franchise for Los Angeles, the San Fernando Valley. And they had to build it underground, and they tried to recruit me, and I resisted until I couldn't resist anymore. And, so I came out and worked for Build Valley Cable, which was one of the first 61 channel two-way cable systems built in the world, for that matter, back then. And, but you're a Brooklyn kid. You come out to California and everybody's going to parties and premieres, and, everybody's in the entertainment business or close to it. And, I wanted to get on those lists, and they kept turning me down, saying, oh, you like the utility, you like the gas company. And then finally I met somebody at, I think it was Universal, and in the marketing department. I said, I don't understand this one thing. I said, the most effective vehicle you have for marketing a movie is a movie trailer. But yet the only time I ever see a movie trailer is when I'm already in the movies. I said, wouldn't you rather people see that when they're at home so that they want to go to the movies? And they said, yeah, but it's too expensive. I said, tell you what, you give me those movie trailers, I'll put them on TV, and you put me on those lists." And they said, "Sure." And then when we started doing audience surveys, what's your favorite channel? They go, "Oh, I love MTV. I love CNN. I love that trailer channel." And I was like, wow, I get in the best 2 minutes of a $50 million movie for free. Then movies are only 50, and people love it. And I filed it in the back of my head. But then the company that I worked for, which was a Canadian company, sold out and they moved back to Toronto. And they wanted me to go to Toronto. And I was like, no, no, no. I said, I didn't go from New York to LA to go to Toronto. I'm done with the cold. And me and my partner, my friend Alan, we started just kicking around ideas to stay in California. And, Alan says, I've been playing around with this idea. I wonder why nobody's done MTV of the movies. And I said, wait a second. I said, I had this trailer channel on Valley Cable and everybody loved it. And when you think about it, and what did MTV do in the early days? They stood a host in front of a green screen and said, hey, Madonna has a new video. I said, we could stand a host in front of a green screen and say, Ian Schwarzenegger has a new movie. The business model is fairly close. You're getting high quality production value for free, and you're using very inexpensive to shoot host introductions of the content you already got for free. So we thought we were brilliant. We wrote a business plan, and everybody just said, it's interesting idea, but no, people don't start TV networks. You got to be a big media company. You got to be Fox. You got to be Disney. You got to be Paramount. People, there's never been a person who started a TV network, and trust me, you guys are not going to be the first. And but we weren't smart enough to listen, and we kind of went 3.5 years, and we met a guy on Wall Street who we went to his office, and he had movie posters on the wall, and he's like, "Oh, I used to be the entertainment reporter for my college newspaper, and I really like this. I want to do it." And at that time, starting a TV network was somewhere between $60 and $100 million. And I said to the guy, I said, "Yeah, could you give us more like the 100 million so that we could do everything we want?" And he goes, "Oh, no, no, no! I'm only allowed to sign for 2.5." And I'm like, "What am I supposed to do with 2.5 million? I can't even buy the cameras for 2.5 million." And he said, "That's all I could sign for." Anyway, Alan and I said, "You know what? Chances of us, getting bigger money anywhere else are not good." We said, "Well, fine, we'll take it." I had a friend teaching radio, television, film at University of Texas in Austin. And I called him up and said, "Do you have kids that need, summer intern jobs?" And he said, "Yeah, we had trouble placing a lot." I said, "Great, send me all you got." And what people don't realize, because he's a monster today. I mean, it's 142 countries. Um, Evaluation of around $7 billion, and everybody, arguably the largest influence of pop culture in the world. And but people don't realize that he started by two idiots from the East Coast who weren't smart enough to go away. We had 11 employees and 31 interns, and $2.5 million. That was how it started.
Wow. At what point did you realize that E could be something? What was when you were working behind the scenes and kind of watching things grow? What was the moment that you can kind of maybe put your finger on and say, I think I got a network here. I think I got something here."
Well, we launched it and stuff, and Alan and I always believed in it. We said, if you really just think that cable TV back then was an electronic newspaper, CNN was the headline, ESPN was the sports, home shopping were the ads. The second most read section of any Sunday newspaper was the entertainment pages. And we said, clearly that's missing from the equation. So we always believed in it. But once we went on the air, and again, $2.5 million, and that's all we were able to raise. People were going, "Oh my God, why don't you tell us that's what you want to do? We would have given you the money 3.5 years ago." But we very quick, we became the fastest growing TV network in the world. The first year we were in 14 other countries, which was unthinkable.
Wow.
And then, we grew, let's see, from the 11 employees and 31 interns, I think 2.5, 3 years later, we were at 1,100 employees. So
Wow.
the growth curve was quite sharp.
Yeah, yeah. I got exposed to E via Talk Soup with Greg Kinnear when he was the host, and his career has blown up obviously since then. Out of all the different hosts that you've had on different shows on E, what's the best I knew they were going to blow up moment that you can remember?
Well, I mean, with Greg, that was actually, that was one of mine, and that was we we had very limited money, so we had to do stuff on the cheap. So we had to be very creative. And when I told our crew, I said, "Hey, I want to do a TV show that makes fun of TV shows." They looked at me and they said, "Are you out of your mind?" I said, "No, I'm telling you, it's going to work." And with Greg, Greg was fabulous, and women just loved Greg. Particularly when he made a mistake, and they go, "Oh, he's so vulnerable. We just love him." And so, you see, Greg, just watch the clips and just freeform it and stuff. So, and people made fun of E. They said it's never, that's ridiculous. Nobody will ever go along. He ran 26 years. I mean, I should say, Talk Soup ran 26 years. So, we knew we we had a big hit with that. Then the next one, Alan and I met this radio guy in an elevator in New York, and he kept telling us, "Come and see my radio show." And, we were like, "Oh my God, radio's dead. Doesn't this poor guy know it?" And, but we went and saw it. And, to me, there used to be an old TV show called WKRP in Cincinnati, which was all about an ensemble crew doing a radio show. And when I watched Howard Stern's show, I went, "This is the reality version of WKRP." And yeah, but that was another one when, we told people, we said, "Hey, I want to put cameras in this guy's radio studio." They were like, "Larry, radio's been dead. What are you talking about?" And Howard obviously did pretty well. Um, but those were the early ones. And, then we went on to do Wild on E and E Hollywood True Story and The Girls Next Door with, Hefner and the girls. And, and most recently, obviously, the Kardashians.
Yeah, yeah. So what do you think is E's biggest impact to the cultural, like pop cultural landscape as it stands today?
Well, before us, I mean, and people kind of look at me when I say this, um, everybody was taking this stuff so seriously. They would
Mm.
interview Tom Cruise and go, "So, Mr. Cruise, tell us about your next movie." you know, and we were like, I mean, quite honestly, we applied for credentials to go to the Academy Awards, and they rejected us. They said, "Oh, you're some dumb little cable network. No, you can't go." Well, we actually climbed over the fence and snuck onto the red carpet. And, while they were out there doing "So, Mr. Cruz, tell us about your next movie," we were going, "Whoa, Tom, those are great shoes. Where'd you get those?" And because Alan and I just always had this thing like Hollywood is funny stuff. Don't try and make believe it's rocket science. So we dealt with stuff very irreverently. Again, when you look at Talk Soup and, Howard, and then Fashion Police with Joan Rivers and stuff like that, it was all a reflection of Alan and my sensibility. Like, Hollywood is funny stuff. Don't take it too seriously. And people loved it. People were saying, this seems like pirate television, and quite honestly, it was because we didn't even have money to buy broadcast cameras. We ended up buying equipment from some branding marketing company that was using it to make sales tapes, and it was like 3/4 inch tape. I mean, it wasn't even professional gear. But it ended up people going, "Oh my God, it looks like we're watching something we're not supposed to." When we're going, "Yeah, if you only knew."
And there's so many cultural touchstones that E is a part of, and Glambot, I think, is the most recent example that's gone viral in the social media age where attention spans are, about 4 seconds long. That Glambot on E News on the red carpet, I think, is one of the more popular things that's happening now with E. Uh, did you have anything to do with that one, or how did that come about?
Not specifically that one, but it was always this thing that that I look at my contribution and say what I've instilled is that sensibility,
Yeah,
which is kind of held true. And one of the things we always did, saying it doesn't make a difference what you, the producer, really want to watch. It's what does the audience want? How do they want to consume it? How long do they want it? You're here to serve the audience, not to serve your friends or win Emmy Awards or anything like that. So, early days, and again, we're going back to 1987. Um, we had a rule that you could not go, for our editors, you can't go more than 20 seconds without showing a famous, recognizable face. So we were looking at short form when everybody was still in 60-minute formats.
So I want to talk a little bit about your international work. So you've done work internationally in Russia and in China. You built programming for international markets, and I think a lot of people say, and it probably is true, that America's greatest export is our entertainment. How do you translate American pop culture for different international audiences?
Um, well, number one, the subject matter is the subject matter gonna, carry you through? I mean, with for us, it was obvious. People around the world love Hollywood and Hollywood celebrities and all that. But when I got to Russia, I was still at when we did Russia, but I got there as a favor to a lawyer friend who had some clients that were trying to do some media business there, and he asked me to go take a look. And the first thing we did was a music festival, which was ran up until the Ukraine war. It was June 16th to June 21st, called the White Nights Festival, and it's the longest day of the year. And we would bring in Western artists, and literally in 6 days, we'd raise 100% of the budget for the Children's Hospital and the orphanage in St. Petersburg. And but and then while I was there, I started doing say, boy, these people got a lot of problems, and they go home and all they watch is bad news. Let me give them something silly to do it. So we introduced them to soap operas, and just go home, have a beer, sit on a couch, and forget your troubles, kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Um, but a lot of it has to do, quite honestly, with upbringing. And in writing the book, it kind of made me think deeper than I normally would think. I didn't think about most of this stuff, but then writing the book, I was going like, why was it that I was able to create in Russia and create in China and do all this? And a lot of it has to do with the way I was brought up family wise. Like after my dad passed and my mother was living in Florida, I would go there and, say, hey, mom, tonight I want to go to the Italian restaurant at 8 o'clock. And she'd go, no, we're going to the deli at 5:30. And I'm like, no, I don't eat at 5:30 and I don't want deli. And she'd go, this is my house and you're a guest. If you don't like the rules, go stay in a hotel. And that's kind of the way I've always approached these other countries is going, I'm a guest there. I'm not there to change their government or, free them from communism or anything like that. I'm there to let them go to sleep with a smile on their face and wake up the next day thinking it's going to be a better day.
Yeah. Yeah. So let's talk about the memoir now. So Offscript is part memoir, part cookbook. So I thought that was interesting. I've read memoirs from chefs that were cookbooks. That's kind of a natural fit together. But what made you decide to pair recipes with career stories? Are you a foodie at heart?
Yeah, I'm a big foodie. I've been cooking since I'm 12. My parents both worked, so it was learn how to cook or eat peanut butter and jelly for dinner
Mm.
every night, and I wasn't about to do that. So I started, reading my mom's cookbooks and cooking, and then realized I was actually a better cook than she was. Um, so I just kept going, and I really liked it. And then in college, I actually got a job working in the kitchen of a Chinese restaurant, and they just got the biggest kick out of teaching a Caucasian kid how to cook Chinese food and stuff like that. But I was good at it. So I cooked in Chinese for 2 years. I cooked in Italian for 2 years, got me through college. And, but I've always loved it. But then people have been bugging me to write the book. And I'm like, no, I'm not ready to write a book. I don't want to write a memoir because I'm not ready to write a last chapter yet. And, I'm like, my best stuff is still in front of me, not behind me. And, so somebody kept pushing me. And then, I said, you know what? If you really take my life career, you could break it up into 8 different parts. There's my growing up in Brooklyn parts, my Manhattan cable years, my Valley cable years, my years, my Russia years, my China years, my COVID years, my post COVID years. I said, there are actually interesting recipes and stories that kind of come from each of those segments. And I can match the stories with the recipes that inspired me during that time. Like I'm one of the few people in Hollywood that's never been in therapy, and It's true. I mean, I just have to because I've always had cooking has been kind of my meditation, my therapy. I could have the worst stress out day. I go in the kitchen to cook, and by the time I finish, I'm like, I'm okay, I'm good. Um, and it has a lot to do just the process of chopping and colors and all of that. Just takes my mind off of the problems. And usually, by the time I get finished, what seemed like a problem has kind of solved itself anyway. So I don't get crazy about a lot of stuff. So yeah, so wrote the stories of those times, and then with the recipes that I knew how to cook during those times. So yeah, the book is a little bit, and that's kind of what got me over to doing it. Is when the people that were publishing it, I said I want to combine my memoir with a cookbook, and they kind of looked at me and then went, okay, let's try it. No, it did well. I mean, the book went the bestseller list in 4 days.
Wow. Wow. So what's the go-to recipe for you on after a long day, you want to de-stress? What's the go-to?
Well, I love if I'm going to have guests over, I'll do something Chinese or Asian because it always amazes people that I can cook Chinese food as good as any Chinese person on the planet. Um, so if I'm looking to impress, I'll do that. Or if it's just me, I mean, I'm very much into Japanese sushi and stuff, and I know how to do that stuff, Japanese food really well, um, and it's fairly simple. And these days I'm trying to be a little bit healthy anyway, so you know, doing that.
Yeah. So, one thing with combining the memoir with a cookbook is, you have a lot of life stories and a lot of career advice that you give in your book. If you had to distill it down into three essential ingredients to have a successful life or successful business, what would those three essential ingredients be? Do you think?
Well, first and foremost, and people always ask me this when I talk at entrepreneur conferences and I talk to young people. I think we do a great disservice in that we, keep telling people, "Oh, follow your passion," and we get these kids to follow their passion, which typically I find that what they think is their passion is really their hobby, or it should be their hobby. And we all have the same necessities of life. We have to pay the rent and buy food or feed the kids or educate the kids. So I always tell people find something you're good at, work your butt off and become great at it. And then you'll become very passionate about it, but it's going to give you the economic so fortune to be able to follow the things that you thought were your things but were really your hobbies, like for me cooking. I mean, I could end up in the kitchen of a restaurant cleaning the pots and pans. However, I was fortunate enough to be good at something else that gave me the financial wherewithal to be able to pursue that, and you know do it at a high level without having to clean pots and pans in a restaurant.
Yeah. Yeah. So again, kind of keeping up with the food and e-entertainment metaphor. If E were a signature dish, what would it be and why?
Oh God. You know, to me it's it'd be chicken parmesan. I grew up on chicken parmesan, and that was kind of the ultimate. And people always look at me and they go, "Really? That's it? Chicken parm?" They would expect me to say something much more exotic. But that was pretty basic and stuff. And again, he was very basic for Alan and I. We knew people loved Hollywood and Hollywood culture, and just we had that sensibility that it's funny stuff and just stick with it. So yeah, that was it.
Yeah, I think that's perfect. Chicken parm is such a comfort food, right? And e-entertainment for those of us that love pop culture and love entertainment, love movies. E is kind of that comfort food for us. So I think that's an apt comparison.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you talk to hundreds of celebrities over the years, over your career, and I'm sure they're for you, they're just like everybody else. They put their pants one leg at a time. But was there a particular celebrity that you kind of maybe fanboyed over in meeting them?
Sure. Well, I mean, everybody, Alan and I know the Kardashian girls literally since they're born. We were at one time, Alan and I. Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, Bruce and Chris Jenner. We were all, and unfortunately, this other guy named O.J. Simpson. Uh, we were all partners in a new company called FXTV, Fitness and Exercise Television, which fell apart when the incident happened. Um, but that's we just managed to go on and maintain our sensibility, and that it's funny stuff. But the story that probably helped define E as being important in the Hollywood community. There was an actor that was in The Odd Couple, the movie named Jack Lemmon, and Jack was very, very famous at the time, and I mean particularly for that movie and a whole bunch of other movies. But Jack was notorious for not wanting to do publicity appearances. And when he had some movie coming out, and I talked to the manager, and the manager said, "Look, Jack is not going to come on your channel. He doesn't do that." And I was like, "Oh man, what does Jack like to do?" And he said, "Well, Jack likes to go home and play the piano." I went, "Really?" I said, "Okay, what if I put a piano on the set? Jack could come in for an hour. He could play the piano for an hour, and he never has to answer a question for anybody." And the manager said, "What do you mean?" I said, "Just let him play the piano. Nobody will talk to him." And the manager said, "Well, if you can guarantee that." And I went, "Yeah, I guarantee it." So anyway, Jack Lemmon came in, and we put a piano on the set, and he started playing. But you could tell he was very wary. He was looking around going, "These guys couldn't be serious that I don't have to answer questions," and waiting for someone to start talking to him. But nobody ever did. And after he got about a half an hour in, he just started getting really comfortable and just turned to the camera and started talking. And for the next half hour, he talked and said he answered the questions that everybody was asking him for the last 20 years. And when word got out that Jack Lemmon did an exclusive interview on the channel, literally it turned Hollywood around. Everybody wanted to be on the channel.
Wow. Wow. You made him comfortable and he opened up.
Yep.
Yeah. So, where do you see kind of the future of television, movies, entertainment now? I mean, we live in an internet culture. We live in an influencer culture where anybody can kind of be a celebrity overnight and strike while the iron's hot. Where do you see the future of television and entertainment in that sense?
Well, I think we see the genres keep getting wider and wider. I mean, you know, not too long ago we saw the introduction of reality TV, and while everybody said, "Oh, that's a fad," we said, "No, it's not a fad. It's not going away." And now you've got the needs of the audience change. Technology has created all these new devices. I mean, in China, we have a show in China called Hello Hollywood, which is kind of e-news for the Chinese market. And we found out very quickly 72% of the people who watch us on a cell phone. So we started shooting it differently. We edit it differently. We pace it differently. We light it differently. And we were shooting things in a vertical format, and now lo and behold, the 2 years ago, the Chinese jumped into the vertical market and producing all kinds of drama series. And now they hit the US. So, these little 2-minute shorts shot in a vertical format instead of a horizontal format. And a lot of it boosted heavily by AI. And so we don't think it's this or that. We think it's a combination of all. Sometimes I just want to watch a little 2-minute clip on my phone. Other times I want to come home and sit in front of the TV and have a beer and watch a movie for 2 hours with nobody bothering me. So um, we think none of this stuff goes away. It all becomes part of the equation. It doesn't replace the equation. And we're huge fans of AI. We just been using AI for even before GBT existed. And it's not going away. Technology marches on and it changes the business fundamentally. Um, I try to explain to people, if you were to come to me and say, "Larry, could you do a short synopsis of starting a new TV network based on, soda bottles or, make up anything?" It used to take me 5 days to do the research and the competitive analysis. do the budgets, create a PowerPoint, blah, 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 just to get a synopsis, not a full blown business plan. Now, with GPT-4 or Perplexity or one of the AI programs that I use, it takes 30 seconds to plug it in. It spits it out. It takes me about an hour to edit it because it's never perfect. It never replaces the human touch. And so now in 1 hour, I'm getting done what used to take me 5 days. And I explain to people, I go, if I could get paid for my 1 hour, what I used to get paid for my 5 days, why would I not love that? I've reclaimed the most valuable thing we as human beings have, and that's our time. We all got a limited amount of time on this planet, and you use it wisely because it's not going to be here forever. So, I could do more of them and make more money. I could play with my grandbaby more. I could learn how to speak Spanish. I've reclaimed the most valuable thing we have. So AI is not going away. Learn it or perish.
Right. Speaking of AI, Tilly Norwood, this whole blow up of the first AI actress that in the news is saying that agents are circling to try to sign this AI actress. What are your thoughts on that part of the AI piece?
Yeah, I think there's a rush to it. I mean, everybody's trying to figure out AI, and I saw the Tilly stuff, and it's okay. It's not great. It's okay. They'll be better. But I think everybody's looking at that one particularly and saying, you know what? If I sign that, it'll be a great learning experience for me because it'll force me to deal with all the issues that'll come up with IP rights and all of that. So it's still early on. Anybody who tells you they know where this is going in even 2 years is full of it. It grows exponentially. The power of this stuff. When you look at where GBT was, and before, and then 8 months later, you had GBT-4. It was 800 times more powerful. And who knows what AI is going to be capable of. I mean, now you have Sora, you could create video. So really what it's doing is it's putting new tools in the hands of creative people. And while you may see the budgets and stuff come way down, the level of creativity goes way up. You're going to see a lot more really great creative stuff from all over the planet, not just from the US.
How long do you think it'll be before we have a completely AI generated movie? Out feature length, hour and a half, 2 hour movie.
3 months.
3 months.
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
I know people who are already working on them.
That's amazing. So do you think then, I'm kind of going off
I'm
topic, but
not
this is very
saying it's going
interesting.
to be good. I'm saying it's going to be.
Yeah, right. That's the key. That it's going to be out there, and do you think like Hollywood will learn all the wrong lessons from it in terms of if it makes $1 billion, are we going to see a just a glut of AI generated movies?
If it makes $1 billion, yes, because Hollywood, they're all publicly traded companies now, and they sniff money and they follow it. I mean, my biggest problem in Hollywood being, I'm known to be a little bit loony and come up with crazy ideas. And I go pitch, the traditional, the studios and whatever on an idea. And quite honestly, after they go, Larry, that's interesting. What's it like? I'm going, it's not like anything. It's a new idea. Um, Getting them to do something new versus something formulaic is really problematic. I mean, we're seeing it now with late night television. I mean, yeah, there's all this political intrigue going on, but at the end of the day, our late night TV is all the same. We have a guy sit behind a desk and he has a couch with two chairs and he's doing, first he does his political monologue and then he goes, so Tom Cruise, tell us about your next movie. It's boring stuff. Nobody's watching it anymore. So yeah, so they got rid of Colbert and they got rid of Kimmel, although he's back now, for reasons other than good ones. But at the end of the day, they're losing money on these things, and those audiences are just going to continue to shrink.
Yeah, yeah. Larry, just an honor to talk to you and get your feel about Hollywood. Your finger is definitely on the pulse of everything that's going on in pop culture. Off script, congrats on all the success of it being on the bestseller list. Just give me the last few minutes here. Where can people learn more about the memoir? Where can people get it? And on social media or any place to learn more?
Sure, it's called Offscript, Recipes for Success. You can get it on Amazon, Barnes and Noble online, Ingram Spark online. Any of those have it, and there's a little website, Offscript book.com. You could get more information there. But again, it's my life broken up into 8 different segments, and the recipes that inspired me, and then a little bit of guidance on the things that inspire me versus in books and movies and music and that kind of stuff. And it's out like 4 months now. Oh man, actually it's 5 months now, and doing really well. And everybody who reads it just goes, "This is crazy. These stories can't be true." And quite honestly, they're not only true, but they're not even the craziest stories.
They're too crazy not to be true, right?
Yeah.
So what's next on the horizon for you, sir?
Well, I'm doing I've got a big company in China, but with COVID, I started doing stuff in the US, and I've been doing things that have all of which have some kind of social impact component to them. So financial wellness for millennials and conscious parenting about trying to be a parent in today's world. We've got a nighttime talk show coming up early next year with a woman host called Natasha After Dark, which is Natasha Graziano is #1 female motivational speaker. And her show is very much motivational, inspirational. It's not promotional. Um, we've got that. And then about a month ago, I became the chairman of the World Film Institute, which is a nonprofit. And we're turning it into like a platform for doing master classes for anybody who's creating video content of any sort, whether it be commercial, educational, or entertaining. And getting the best of the best teachers to teach people using AI, so that if you watch, and I'm making this up, let's say we have Steven Spielberg teaching directing. In Russia, he speaks Russian. In China, he speaks Mandarin, and so on. So it kind of levels the playing field of, masterclass education in the world. And so we hope to really blow that up.
Wow. Sounds amazing. Sounds amazing. Well, Larry, thank you so much for your time. I appreciate it. Offscript's available everywhere you get books. Don't forget to follow me on socials at Rich Rare and at Eat Your Content. And make sure to like, subscribe wherever you get your podcast. Larry, again, thank you for your time.
All righty. Take care now.
Thanks for listening to Eat Your Content. If you like what you hear, please consider supporting the podcast through my merch store on TeePublic. Get great quality items like t-shirts, hats, mugs, and more, all sporting the vibrant Eat Your Content logo. Go to teepublic.com/user/eatyourcontent for more great items, and thanks for your support.